Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth episode of We, the Next Generation. I'm your host, Ethan McKellar, and today we are going to talk about climate change and the environmental crisis, and as well as also, of course, see a snippet of Gianna go out to talk to young voters and get their insight on the upcoming election. As of recording it today, we're recording it the day it comes out, so we're looking at 19 days or so until the election. So we're definitely getting tighter, getting closer to the day of deciding hopefully who our next president will be. But that being said, though, just a weekly reminder that it may not be as clear as we think it is. Just like in 2020, it took a couple of days to figure out after contesting all of the votes and Donald Trump contesting where he thought he won or lost, and we can expect that again. So just a kind of another warning that we're going to see that the election won't actually end on election day. It could last, as long as a couple of days, or it could go on as, in some ways people say the election didn't really end until January 6th when finally, they certified those votes. That being said, though, the polls are getting tighter, and it's really anyone's game, they're kind of saying. We're looking at the New York Times poll, collection of polls, and we're seeing that just a couple of days ago, Trump was at 46% versus Harris's 49%. Now, Trump is up a point he's now at 47 versus Harris's 49. So while Harris still has the lead, it's still not by many, and it's definitely inside the margin of error. So with that, we're definitely still very close, and voting is important. Many places you can still vote by mail, and that's still available for you, but they are closing the ability to vote by mail in a few states. And you can definitely the places that you can register is very low. I think you've already had to be registered in most states, and of course, voting in person will still be available on voting election day, and that is a great way to vote as well. But if you're a college student, like a lot of our viewers, voting by mail is a totally possible and encouraged way. Just make sure that you are a few things that I've seen online that people have been doing that we want to make sure to get around. Don't take pictures of your ballot. In some states, they have laws, especially the swing states, actually only the swing states, where your vote can be disqualified, or there can be fines or other reasons or things to block you of your vote if you take a picture of your ballot. And yeah, don't be showing your ballot around or sharing it. Put it in the envelope and mail it out, and you'll be safe, and your vote will be safe. We encourage dropping it off right at places that have drop-offs, post offices, and or if there are ballot drops-offs in your areas, like I did, your vote should be counted. So polls are close, and it's really up to everyone to vote, and we hope that you do. Just one last thing about the polls, just to kind of update our listeners, if this is the place where you're getting your news, we can kind of let you know where Harris is leading slightly in Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And then Trump is slightly leading again in North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona. While that's only 3 each or so, they all have obviously different electoral votes that can impact. Also, we're coming out of a crazy weekend and week of hurricanes. And we've seen Florida be hit by, a hurricane, and part of our topic today is environmental crisis. And so we did see both candidates speak slightly on environmental crises, more about how they're going to maybe support the people in those areas. Specifically, we did want to notate about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden emphasizing that they will not allow companies or businesses that might up their prices to basically price gouge on people who need help or locations or support. Those are being hotels, gas stations, stuff like that. And then to our last point, again, kind of looping back and just providing some context about the environmental crisis, we're going to show a clip of Tim Walz at the debate talking about the differences between him and Kamala Harris's environmental plan and Trump and J.D. Vance's. So here's the clip.
Back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country.
So now we're going to go right into our conversation with Nikki, who is a environmental science major at Pace University and has a great insight about how Gen Z has an impact on the election in context of the environmental crisis. All right, so Nikki, welcome to the podcast. Love for you to give a little background on who you are and what you're doing here in New York.
Okay, cool. So my name's Nikki. I am originally from Miami, Florida, but I moved to New York for college 2 years ago, and I'm an environmental science major at Pace University. Yeah, that's what I'm doing here.
So what made you want to go into environmental science?
So during the pandemic, we all went down that rabbit hole of like having nothing to do. And I found this documentary on animal agriculture, and it like shocked me that I didn't know this information that was going to directly impact me and my generation in the future. So I started doing a bunch of research on everything environmental, and I got really into it. And then I decided, wait, there's a career in this, and it's needed in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And how, so obviously you said like it's something that impacts like our generation. Mm-hmm. How do you feel like kind of more in a, I guess in-depth way, how does climate change affect our generation the most?
So it's kind of gotten to a point where if we don't make serious change in the next like 5 years, we will see detrimental effects. There's actually this clock in near Washington Square Park, and it tells you like five years left, and then it's like doom. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's actually crazy. But the past generations kind of set it up for us in that now we have to deal with the effects. So it's really different for our generation. There's actually a big kind of, I guess you could say, epidemic going on with our generation called climate anxiety. And a lot of Gen Z just feels the stress and pressures of climate change, as well as it being so widespread on social media and us having all this access to this information and not knowing what to do with it. But there's benefits to that too. Like we can really make change and advocate because we have that platform.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's a more sense of urgency with us, and why do you feel like maybe it isn't talked about as much in like I think barely it was talked about in any of the debates, or barely hearing any of the candidates talk about it now. Why do you think that is?
I have a feeling it's probably because they are part of older generations and they're trying to catch the attention of older generations. I think Kamala is kind of leaning towards Gen Z a little bit, which surprised me because you're right, they barely talked about any climate activism. I don't know why, but I know it's really sad because that's something we need to implement change on now. But your vote still matters because even if the candidates aren't really just like talking about those topics, there's still individual laws and things to vote on within the ballot for your state. Like for Florida, they had like an infestation of an animal. They want to make hunting and fishing the primary way to get rid of that instead of science-based. And it used a lot of terminology that was very vague and saying like forever the right to fish and hunt. And that's kind of crazy if you think about it, because if the opposite happens and a species is going extinct, then people in Florida still have the right to hunt and fish. So your vote really matters for those things, even if the candidates themselves aren't really publicly speaking about climate change.
That's actually really interesting because I think people do kind of forget that a lot of times we're not just voting for president. Obviously, we're voting for all these other roles, governors, senators, but also these kind of question, votes. A lot of times, they'll have like questions on the ballot, and so I think that is an interesting point that we should, remember that voting is more than just kind of voting for the president that can maybe create change, but also all these other things. And that we a lot of times see our direct vote have a bigger impact there.
Yes.
How do you feel in the sense that we're seeing obviously a lot of natural disasters happen now in all over the world, and specifically forest fires and other stuff like that, and our environment kind of showing us that things are kind of going bad and can continue to going bad. How do you feel like we can reach older voters who maybe don't understand our point of view, but there are obvious things out there to show that things are going not great?
Yeah.
But how can we still reach them better? To hopefully get our point across that we need to save our environment.
I think trying to show them that it's going to directly affect their sons and daughters and other family members that are part of younger generations, pulling at their heartstrings a little and being like, we know it's not completely your fault that you guys handled the way that you did, and now this is how it is, but like, try to help us now that you can and you're aware.
Yeah.
With all of the storms and stuff and like extreme weather, it's hard to prove to people that like this is because of climate change because we've had extreme weather before. It's the fact that we're having it closer together, we're having it more often, and people don't really take that into account until it's too late and it directly affects them. For example, my family's in Florida. We just had 2 hurricanes back to back, really bad hurricanes, like crazy winds, super big, and it's because the atmosphere is heating up, the water's heating up, the storms collect more warm water, it gets bigger. And if you're not from Florida, people are like, prayers to you, but if it doesn't directly affect you, a lot of people don't really pay much mind to it. Yeah. So.
Or they blame it on Kamala Harris and the Democrats, which is kind of an interesting point because we're finding that like that was, the Republicans like kind of go-to was like to not blame it on. They could have taken that and made a conversation on climate change and on importance of taking care of our environment, but instead it kind of used it as an attack, right? And so, how do you feel about that idea of climate change being politicized? Is that really necessary when it's something that affects us all?
No.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy, actually. The fact that it's still a question for many, is climate change real? I have family that I still argue with it about, and the facts are right in front of you. Like, if you really try and do the research, there is science-based evidence. And at this point, what is the problem with trying to make how we treat the planet a little better? Even if you don't completely believe it's going to end in disaster, we can still take action to help save our planet because the way we're treating it right now isn't.
Yeah, and live in a healthier environment, right? I mean, we're seeing there are cities that have super bad pollution and other things like that are affecting the way they live. They've had to wear masks for most of their lives and stuff like that. And so it's what's interesting is kind of what you're saying. Like, it may not be affecting you right now, but it's affecting millions of other people in the world.
And it will affect you.
Right, and it will at some point,
exactly.
right? I mean, some of these things that we never thought would happen are happening, right? Harsher and stronger and more close together hurricanes and stuff in places in the country that maybe weren't hit so hard before are now being hit. So it kind of to that point of about now reaching older voters. How can we reach younger voters to also jump on board onto climate activists and act as making sure that we actually make strides in fixing what's happening now?
Yeah, so I do believe that like our generation, Gen Z, is very woke to the problem, and they do know that it's an issue. There's many people that I've met that are really stressed about it. They just don't know what steps to take in order to make a difference, and it's hard. It's really overwhelming because it affects like every part of life. I would say, obviously, individual change is really important, and just like making an effort every day to choose sustainability over convenience.
Would you be able to go into a little bit more what you mean by that? Like, what's an example of something someone could do?
For example, like, convenience is throwing away things and not really like being mindful about it, and like you finished your meal, you just throw it all in the trash. Being more sustainable is taking that effort to see the recycle bin and like throwing away some things in the recycling, and then if there's compost, you throw it in there. Another way is like when you go out shopping for clothes, you try to get secondhand instead and you don't just buy fast fashion. Or if you're buying something online, you check the packaging, see if it's actually, Amazon has an option where you can put in the search filters like eco-friendly, and it'll help you like filter that out so you don't get as much packaging and things like that. Yeah, just making those like small steps. Obviously, it's not going to make a whole lot of change. If a lot of people do it, it will. But that's like something you yourself can do so you know you're making a difference. But then structurally, also trying not to contribute or give money to companies that have non-sustainable practices or unclear. There's websites you can search up labor laws, you can search up sustainability rules for companies that you follow. Just doing the research behind that. It takes more effort, but it's kind of like when you're going through your day-to-day, you know that if you get something done now, later you won't have to worry about it. If you choose to nap instead, and then later it's going to catch up to you, it's the same thing. Like choosing sustainability over convenience, because in the future it's going to be better for you.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break and we'll be back with our interview. But for now, we're going to go to Gianna Joyce, who's out in the field talking to young voters about the upcoming election.
Hi, my name is Gianna Joyce, and this is Get Real with G.
I'm Jared.
I'm Allende.
And so, are you registered to vote in Jersey or Virginia, or are you registered? Are you just voting in New York?
Yeah, in New Jersey, yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I'm registered for Virginia.
Okay, slay. And like, how do you feel about that? Do you think that your vote matters where you are, or does it benefit you to vote in your state or to vote in New York better?
Yeah. I think like it probably won't make too much of a difference, because like I don't know, like New Jersey generally leans blue. Um, but like I'll contribute to that, you know. So it's not like a yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I'd say the same for me, but I do feel like it's important just to contribute because, at least for me, we always haven't had the opportunity to contribute. So, regardless, I'm always going to contribute.
Anna, what's your name?
Barrage.
Slay Rod. Okay, so number one, are you registered to vote?
I'm not.
How dare you? Why are you not registered to vote?
I don't know. I just haven't gotten around to it. My friends have been pressuring me, but I need to get it.
Tisk. Anna, what's your name?
Daisy.
You give Daisy energy.
Ava.
Ava. Oh, is this so pretty? So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. Number one, are you registered to vote?
No.
Okay, so you are registered to vote? Yes. And where are you registered to vote? Like,
I don't know. I just know that I registered to vote in a park once. Like, they asked me to register, so I did it there. I don't know where I am though. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Tara.
and
I'm Taryn.
okay, slay. And if you guys are you registered to vote? Number one.
No, we're not registered because we're British. Yeah, we're not registered to vote.
And if you were registered to vote, where would you be voting?
From Texas. Obviously, Texas is like a red state. Harris.
Yeah.
We're supporting Harris. And I'm gonna be honest, we aren't as informed as we should be from being British. Every vote does matter, but then especially in Texas, like such like a populated state and like a really large homeless population as well, I think people should also focus on, making every single vote count. So like increasing education on,
Yeah.
the election,
Yeah.
and also making sure that minority groups, homeless people, they will also get a chance to vote.
Yeah. Okay. Great. This was Get Real with G. Thank you so much for watching.
All right, now back to our interview with Nikki. And it's so interesting because I feel like what we're finding is that kind of the company point is so interesting because, there is at times a direct correlation to sustainability is more, less cost effective. At times, right? Sometimes. I mean, in some ways, really not though, right? If you think about the thrifting idea or the, reusing like clothes and stuff like that, like that's, not, more expensive. But for these companies that want you to buy things, right, constantly and all that stuff, it's a kind of a hard correlation. How do you prove to them? We need them on board as well, these companies on board. Do you think that there is a possibility that when our generation becomes those business leaders, those company leaders, we'll see a really strong impact? Or do you think that money will still kind of like win out?
I feel like that's something that we can change right now. Just having more moments of discussion like this and really not avoiding like the seriousness of the issue, because it's so scary that a lot of people just don't even want to think about it. I've been in moments in my life where I'm like, I can't think about this right now because it's affecting me. But if people just open their eyes and realize, wait, I can make change. Like, I'm going out into the world and now it's my turn. I think we can definitely see like a positive impact with businesses and sustainability. I think that's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now to kind of bring it back to Gen Z, something we always kind of do each like time is talk about how social media is such an intricate part of our generation. What role do you see social media plays in spreading awareness about climate change? And do you feel like there are some other that social media has also in some ways maybe created difficult ways to communicate about climate change?
Yeah. So I mean, social media is amazing in so many ways. It really does, like, that's where I get a lot of my research, obviously. I guess YouTube would count as social media.
Yeah.
It's like, that's where I get a lot of my stuff. It's just kind of like knocks on people's doors. Like, that's how you get, like, oh, here I am, let me watch this. This is something important. And it's really good to spread awareness, but there is that blockage of, like, okay, what do I do now that I have all this information? And a lot of people get lost in it and like reposting and all that. Yes, advocating is very good, spreading awareness and informing people, but you also need to get your foot in the real world and start doing things, which is with the individual mindfulness of everyday things. And also, if you can, get into some like policy, protests, things like that.
Yeah, 'cause that's so interesting. I feel like we do find a lot of people kind of, and there is a part of doing your part is to go on social media and act, and be an advocate for it. But also you're saying kind of like this idea, we gotta, back it up with actual action. And to your point, just to kind of reemphasize that, doing your part could also just be kind of what you said in your daily life, right? Recycling, stuff like that. Are there any other ways that you would suggest to people to, maybe be a little bit more aware of what they're doing?
Yeah. I would say it's mostly just be mindful of where your money goes, because it makes a big difference, and who you support out there. Also, like, if you're part of a business or if you're part of a school or a club, try to find ways to inspire sustainability within that business, because it really just takes one voice to make a little bit of change. Yeah. Also, just, like, protests, if you see something going on, cleanups, those are, even though it's, like, a little fraction of, like, what we need, it's something, and if everybody does it, it's going to add up.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And to this point, actually, Nikki was a huge advocate for making sure that our online store, which she also helps out with, is sustainable and eco-friendly. So we're obviously always in the pursuit of making sure that happens. But as of right now, I think all of our stuff is eco-friendly. And we're going to continue to make sure that our online store, which you can check out on our Instagram, is eco-friendly, because it's obviously important as well. So thanks for coming on. We appreciate a great conversation, and hopefully people do go out there and not just talk about it, but also create a great change.
Yeah. Don't let it overwhelm you. We got this.
All right, everyone, that is our episode today. Again, just want to emphasize 19 days until the election. Get out and vote, if that's either by mail, an absentee ballot, or of course in person. And just be careful of any laws that are out there that might help prevent you to vote, and make sure just be educated about those laws and about any restrictions that might be on you. Again, there are places in the country where your name might have been taken off the voter registration list. There might have been places where there are laws against you can help give water to people online. Literally the craziest laws to stop you from voting. Make sure you stay educated and vote. We'll see you next week on With the Next Generation.